Well, namaste and welcome. Today I thought I will discuss something about the political crisis in America. And I'm not going to discuss what is happening in the day to day matter, but my attempt is to look at the bigger picture out here. And what is happening in America is quite disturbing, and it has relevance for India as well. Because in America, what you see is that the elite political factions of American polity are so divided that they can't even talk to each other. Instead, they have resorted to unleashing mob violence against each other to bring the other side down. So the Democrats did that with Black Lives Matters, with Antifa, through the NGOs they control, through the loyalty they command in the media and the academia. So they were basically very happy to see this mob violence, which spreads the sense of anarchy, disturbance, and dents the prospects of Trump in the next election. Similarly, Trump has also been playing with the fire with his irresponsible tweets and irresponsible language. Maybe he's not as bad as people say he is, but he certainly is very irresponsible, very immature when it comes to his political language. And this is something which is disturbingly quite similar to what was happening in the late Roman Republic, where political factions also resorted to mob violence against each other in order to bring the other side down. And what happened was that in the end, Republic collapsed. First, Sulla took over, then Gaius Julius Caesar took over, and then Augustus, who basically declared Republic, or he converted Republic into an empire. Now, what are the reasons behind this American political crisis? Certainly, it's not Trump, in my opinion. Trump is simply the symptom of a much deeper problem. It's not even Bernie Sanders or those crazy far left people. They're also symptoms of the problem. What is happening in America is a couple of things, in my opinion. One is there's a crisis of identity. So since the 1960s and the 70s, for sure, the American public intellectuals, their academicians, have destroyed the sense or notion of nation and nationalism. Somehow, nation is an oppressive construct. Somehow, nationalism is an evil construct. Nationalism is just like Nazism or fascism, right? So, if you're a nationalist, you are an evil person because you are discriminatory, you are supremacist, you are white supremacist in America. In India, you are a Hindu supremacist if you say you are a nationalist. But the decline of that nationalism has stripped away the bonds which connected one American from each other to each other. Now, America is also a very diverse country, right? So they are predominantly white, but that's just one trait, right? They are a very diverse culture. They have regional diversity, regional differentiations and variations. And how do you bring such a vast landmass together? There has to be an idea of nationalism, but that has been systematically destroyed and replaced with what? Replaced with either one, subnationalities, which are supposed to be perpetually hostile to each other, like blacks and whites, like Jews and Christians, or like now you have the Muslims out there. So, which are supposed to be warring camps, stereotyped communities, which are frozen in silo in time, and they can't live together without creating ruckus. So, and you have to constantly fight for the rights of the minorities because they are fewer in number and the white majority is oppressive. But that has basically converted American socio-political landscape into an arena of extreme polarization and, let's say, I will say, lack of trust. The this kind of narrative over the long term does have an impact in breaking down the public trust. The second thing it has been replaced with these abstract identities like LGBTQ, like women, like students, which are abstract identities in the sense that uh, being a woman does not is not the definition of your entire life, or being a student is not the definition of your entire life, or being a man is not just the only identity you have. It's not the definition of your entire life. And when you say the women's march, the women's march against the Trump, now you are appropriating. It's such an abstract identity that is even laughable because there might be equal number of women who are supporting Trump, but these kind of abstract identities which do not really exist on the ground has been sought to impose on the people, thus breaking down anything which might connect different groups of people together. And that lack of national narrative, that national identity, the lack of that pride in America has basically meant that Americans no longer see themselves as part of a common project, but they see themselves fighting some perpetual ideological war. Like the Republicans denounce the Democrats as not just communists or, let's say, uh, anti-religious no people, but as somebody who is a threat to the mere existence of America. And similarly, the Democrats describe anyone who's Republican as Nazis or fascists who are planning to kill millions of people and send millions to concentration camp, who are a threat to the very existence of America. Now, this is why this is happening, because you have divided the people into different silos, and then you are trying to control those silos through extreme ideological or polarizing narratives. That has converted America into a battleground, because there is no mega construct or mega narrative to hold it together. And this is relevant in India because in India, we are seeing the same kind of tendencies these days that, well, I'm not a nationalist, I'm a patriot. You know, I don't believe in nationalism, I believe in constitutional patriotism. Now, only, goodness knows what does constitutional patriotism is, because how can be you a patriot to constitution, because constitutions comes from the people, it comes from the state, without the state power or without the nation to back that state power, the constitution is just a book, right? It means nothing unless until it is enforced by the coercive power of the state. And state arises from the nation arises from the people. Now, that kind of narrative is also doing lots of damage in India. And you're seeing that, the tendency of people to disregard national interest, or even in the case of national crisis, like in the case of Balakot standoff between Pakistan and India, we have seen that lots of people were not averse to doing Pakistani propaganda just to oppose the government, because for them, nation does not matter. Is that these Nazis who are ruling India, they need to be defeated. Now, that kind of mentality is sweeping into India, and that is why it is very necessary to reinforce and reassert nationalism in India. We cannot give it up, because if we give it up, then India is much more diverse, much more, uh, you know, uh, what to say, uh, inhabited by so many people speaking so many languages, right? So in America, at least, people speak one language, English. In India, is like diverse on every parameter: caste, religion, ethnicity, language, right? Regional differences. So if we give up on nationalism, it will be very tough to hold India together. And never forget that. You might have your, objections to nationalism. So now some Tamil might say, oh, this is Hindi nationalism. Muslims might say this is Hindu nationalism. Seculars will say this is a bourgeois nationalism, whatever. But that nationalism, whatever it is important just to hold India together. And we should learn our lessons from the America, not to go their stupid way. The second point is the problem of the, uh, let's say, increasing disenchantment from the religion in America. Now, religion is one more thing which stabilizes the society, right? So even if you're an atheist, uh, you have to give it to the religion. You have to look at religion from a perhaps an anthropological perspective, right? Many people have talked about it. Yuval Noah Harari has talked about it, that religion simply enables large group of people to live together peacefully in relative peace, and also to coordinate and build a bigger society, because it is impossible for human beings beyond 50, 60, or 100, a group of 100 to even live together or coordinate together unless and until they make believe in a common myth. So, according to him, nationalism is simply a common myth, just like religion. But I think religion is much more than that. One thing religion does, and I will quote Karl Marx here, and I think Karl Marx was absolutely right when he said that religion is the opium of the masses. And uh, he was right, because he says that it gives hope to the hopeless, right? It provides stability to the people whose lives have been turned upside down. It provides you that, let's say, a ray of hope on which you can latch upon and live, right? And you don't go full nihilist. You don't believe that everything is false and stupid in the world. You try to explain what is happening to your life, which you can't explain otherwise, and that is a stabilizing factor in the society. Religion grounds the society. Religion also creates other problem, and I'm talking strictly from, let's say, a social science perspective. But the the fact that religion has survived for millennia is not 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. The concept of religion is millennia old because it does play some role in the social organization of the human society. And if you give it up, it will be filled by equivalent kind of ideologies or construct, right? It's not that if you become an atheist society, you will be free of dogma or superstition. That will be filled up by some other religion, right? Like in America, you have this whole thing of wokeism. Now, this wokeism is just like religion, inflexible, extreme. It inculcates fanaticism in the followers. It also has its own version of witch hunt, persecution, inquisition. People are being thrown out, their careers being destroyed, people being beaten up of the street because they don't believe in that woke construct of that issue. Maybe it's gender, politics, economy, or whatever. Now, if religion goes away, the old religions, right? So even Christianity, for that matter, especially the Catholic Christianity and the older churches of Christianity, they are far more stable. They do not really inculcate that much of fanaticism as the new religions, in the sense that evangelical Christianity in America, so which is like quite fanatic in the sense, quite Puritan. Now that's a different debate altogether. But because all religions like Hinduism or Catholic faith or the traditional Judaism, they have lived with civilization for so long that they have refined themselves. They have become part and parcel of the life of the societies, which basically now acts as stabilizer in the society. They do not, they, from their inherent wisdom, they understand that we can't let people come and claim they're going to change the world in one day, because all the religions have seen this thing that the world will change. The promise of a better world is always there, and they realize in thousands of years that day never comes. So they are very much in tune, and they certainly play some role. I mean, it's difficult for me to understand and to explain it, but I don't think anyone has been able to explain what role exactly the religion play in the society from an anthropological or social science perspective. But in my opinion, it stabilizes this community. It does not let them become foot soldiers of, let's say, communism, Marxism, or different kind of fanatic ideologies. The third point is, which is important, is the economic crisis in America. The inequality in America is a fact. It has increased a lot since the 1970s. Very few people have been benefiting from the growth, and majority of the population, the working class, who are white Americans mostly, they have not benefited. So there's a tendency for this group to get mobilized and radicalized, either through the slogans of "Make America Great Again" or through what you say Antifa kind of group, that your class enemies are the one who are responsible. You go and beat them up or eat the rich kind of a rhetoric. Other thing is the changing nature of the society because of economic changes. So if you see, the stable jobs, the well-paying stable jobs have been disappearing, and they have been replaced by gig economy or the contract work, which does not, gives income security, social security to the majority of the people. Majority of the people then decide not to even marry, or they marry very late in their life, which means the families are small, which means most people do not even want to have kids because living costs are through the roof. Why would you want to marry and have kids? So the this kind of economy which survives not just on labor but on gig labor now, where even the jobs which are in academia, media, or what you say, the high level jobs are also now becoming contractual. That is creating further atomization of the American society. So everyone is now an individual, right? Everyone is an individual. People are not even marrying anymore in America to a great extent. The fertility rate is 1.6, 1.7 now, which is creating this vast social crisis, which is creating this pool of people who are disconnected, from the society around them. They're just living for themselves. Perhaps we can invoke Francis Fukuyama's great work, The End of History and the Last Man Standing. Now, the end of history is often ridiculed that he basically was being over optimistic when he said that with the end of Cold War, liberal democracy has triumphed, and this will be the order of the day, and liberal democracy will control or rule over majority of the world. That didn't happen, and his thesis is often ridiculed. But he also said something which is often forgotten, which is the second part, the last man standing, where he said that this kind of prosperity, this kind of liberal democracy, liberalism, will create a human being who is only concerned about himself. And the only concern is their next shopping trip, or how they can gratify themselves, or what they can achieve for themselves, right? My life, my rules kind of thing. Or this extreme individualism, or, my choice, my life, my choice, my life, my rule, my way or the highway kind of mentality. It will happen to such an extent these people can't even understand what the other human being is thinking, and they won't be able to even understand the threat to the society, because they can't imagine that, let's say, a follower of an ISIS or Islamic State does not think like them, that he's not thinking about the next iPhone he can buy, he's thinking about his ticket to heaven. So that will create a problem, and this is what has happened exactly in America. The extreme individualism, driven mainly by economic changes, because when economic structure change, the social structure automatically changes, right? That is why in India, the joint families have simply disappeared in just 2 generations, because as we moved away from an agrarian economy to a more industrial economy or urban economy, you don't need bigger families. You need free people. You need people who can move from cities to cities, take up job in factories, in offices, far away from their home. So joint families can't survive under that circumstances. And if it goes further, as is happening even in India, in Mumbai, or in metropolitan centers, or what has already happened in Europe or America, that it will become not even nuclear family, it will become just individual family. So first it will be individual mother, individual father, then it will be just an individual. And that basically creates this massive social crisis, because ultimately humans need some purpose in life. They need support, they need company. And the family structures, the role the family played, is now being replaced by these ideological formations, by these political associations, which are tapping into that mass of discontented American youth to mobilize them for things like Antifa, Black Lives Matters, and so on. And these people have now become the cannon fodder or the foot soldiers for the smarter people, the smarter politicians or demagogues to mobilize using the power of the social media. So it's a convergence of lots of things: economic crisis, economic transformation, changing the social structures, decline of the religion, which is creating a vacuum now being filled by extreme ideologies or extreme polarizing views, that everyone is an enemy, but you are the only one who's pure enough, and everyone is compromised, everyone is an enemy. And then the rise of social media, which now makes mobilization much more easier on a mass scale. So I think these are the things which I wanted to talk about, that these are very important uh, you know uh, themes which are playing at the background of this American political crisis, which are not being talked about enough. Because everyone is about how evil the Trump is, or how the Nancy Pelosi is an evil woman, but people are not looking at the bigger picture out here. And this is important in India, because as I told you, that we must not uh, back down on nationalism. We need to promote, strengthen, and spread the idea of Indian nationalism. Second thing is that we should not give away on religion, which is Hinduism in India. It might have its own problem, it might have its internal fault lines and conflicts. But if you give away this religion, this old religion, you are opening yourself to maybe much more vicious constructs, which we can't even imagine as of now. Maybe it won't be wokeism, it may be something else, and that will destabilize the entire society. There will be great anarchy in the country. Uh, uh, and the third point is we have to do something about economy as well. In India, also, There are not enough jobs for the people, both in the private sector. The government is also not filling. There are millions of vacancies at the state and the central level. They're not filling them up, citing some voodoo economics of fiscal deficit, which works up to a point, but not beyond that. So you have to be cautious about how much you are spending beyond your means as a country, but it does not mean that you stop giving up jobs, because uh, that's also all interconnected. We can perhaps discuss that sometime later, but we have to look into this decline of the availability of good quality, stable jobs to our people. We can't repeat the mistake of America and the Europe. We have to look at the emerging social crisis in the metropolitan centers. We are seeing the symptoms of these young people in the college getting radicalized because, according to them, only they matter. Uh, and a lot of them come from broken families. The people who gather at the drop of the hat in Janta Mantar or in the front of the police station, uh, we really need to study those people, right, as to what kind of society or family background they're coming from, and what is driving them to these kind of nihilist, extremist uh, ideologies, which treat India as its enemy, and anyone who does not agree with them as Nazis, or someone who should be sent to Gulag in the Siberian camp. So I hope that uh, we all will think on this thing, and please do share your thoughts on the points I have raised. I will love to listen to you, and I will also, uh, you know, respond to that as much I can, because I think it's a process of mutual learning. The starting of this Patreon page is basically not just to give my gyan to you, but also to listen from you and to learn from you. But thank you for listening to me, and thank you for being a patron. See you soon.